Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to take a renewed look at the meta snapshot as of update 3.7. We haven't had too many characters coming in the last two updates, but a lot of them have been super impactful, and additionally, we haven't done one of these since Halloween, so it's high time we do one. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the meta snapshot, I am essentially looking at the best 30 characters in the game, all things considered. So their performance in PvE content like Shadowlands, World Boss, Extreme Alliance Battle, as well as their performance in PvP content like Alliance Tournaments, Alliance Conquest, and King of the Hill, in addition to their cost, how easy they are to play, and any other additional barriers that may be stopping these characters from dominating, whether they need a uniform or something like that. So I want to start off very briefly by showing you the last list from October 31st, roughly. Notably missing from those lists, obviously, were the Ultimates, which came after that, but then also the more recent characters, X-23, Blue Marvels from the Ultimates, but also Adam Warlock. Additionally, unfortunately, none of the characters you see in front of you right now, Falcon, Satana, or Punisher, make it onto the list, unfortunately. I did consider them, as well as other characters that got uniforms, but they just didn't make enough of a push to make it into the top 30. So let's take a look at the new list side by side with the old list, and we'll talk about some of the big moves that happened, and then I'll just focus on the new list and give my breakdown of why certain characters are placed in certain ways, because I went back and I read your feedback in the comment section from my last list, and I took that into consideration. The biggest takeaway that I got from the last video that I made, the last snapshot, was there was too much of an emphasis on Extreme Alliance Battle, and there wasn't enough emphasis overall on a character's value. So I wanted to reflect the new list a little bit more accurately, because even though the meta for me or for another player might be ABX focused, the entire community dictates the meta. And if everyone wants to focus on Conquest or World Boss speed clears or Shadowlands speed runs, then certain characters are going to rise and fall to meet that meta. So I wanted to reflect that accurately. But some big moves from last update or last snapshot to this snapshot are the disappearance of some key characters. Thor dropped 13 spots. He's way out of the list, thanks largely in part to the nerf to his damage. Unfortunately, we didn't know how bad the hit would be when his third skill got fixed and the lag that it created was removed, but yeah, it really cost Thor his place, and he doesn't really dominate in any one game mode, and he just doesn't clear as fast as a lot of other characters, so he can't be considered on that level, and he doesn't have the same kind of impact in individual game modes like Loki and Hulk do with their uniforms. So I considered it, and I wanted to put Thor a lot higher on this list, but if you just look at every character on the list, they all can do things as well as he can, and on top of what he can do, they can do other things that he can't. And some obviously notable new additions to the list: Nova, Ant-Man, Blue Marvel, of course, but also X-23 and surprisingly Adam Warlock. I don't have them on the list, but I would probably put Miss America around rank 50. And then I have nowhere and no clue where to put Quasar, because I still have her at 3 stars level 1. Off the list completely are Robbie Reyes, Mantis, Gwenpool, and Kid Kaiju. These were characters at the bottom of the top 30 snapshot that just don't even stand a candle to some of these top 10, top 15 heroes. The other thing that I've noticed now that we switch and focus specifically on the new list is that the number of very high level characters is growing. And the top 15 especially are extremely heavy characters, mostly native tier 2, but almost any of these characters can one-shot you and can dominate in any game mode, basically, as long as they're applicable. They're not restricted from playing. So we are seeing a broadening of the base of super powerful characters. Of course, there's still a noticeable gap between the top 2 reigning king and queen, but it's kind of weird in a way. We think that the meta is shifting because it seems like the game is so imbalanced, and it is, and yet I find it harder and harder to make these lists because there are so many good characters concentrated in this top 30. Unfortunately, it's 30 out of 150, so we do need to keep that in mind here. We're only looking at a fifth of the total characters in play. But having said that, I was surprised to have so much difficulty putting these characters where I put them. And that's where I welcome your feedback. But let's take a look a little bit closer at the results. Jean Grey has taken her rightful place on the throne. I heard you guys, I was wrong. Quicksilver is not the king. He is the queen. He's second place, whatever you call that. But then I put Wolverine exactly where he was to begin with. Rank 3. I don't think he's changed much. No one can dethrone him from Extreme Alliance Battle for Combat Hero. He's an extremely fast clear for all PvE content, and he just keeps on getting better as long as you keep ranking up his uniform and beefing him up. He's a super tank, but he also has that amazing offensive threat, and his health. He's basically one of the only true tanky characters that can stand toe-to-toe with Jean Grey and Quicksilver and live to tell about it. Then up next we have Nova, coming all the way up to number 4. I think this one's going to be hotly contested. I know we still have some people a little bit confused or a little bit irked that the boycott may or may not be over, but I do think Nova deserves this place. He is an absolute monster now that I've played with him in other game modes, and he can literally one-shot anyone from full health with one skill, number 2. He does the number 2, and you go to number 0 health. It's bananas. And he scores crazy high in Universal Hero. He eclipses everyone by a mile. So it's kind of no contest. He dominates everywhere. Next up, I put Apocalypse. So I actually rose Apocalypse's spot 2 spots from 7 to 5, and I'll explain why. He's the only combat supervillain to dominate in Extreme Alliance Battle, but in addition, we're starting to see him, and we've seen him now for quite a while, certain spots and on certain weeks for Alliance tournaments. So he is making more of a presence in PvP as people and teams figure out how to gear him in the right way defensively. He's got those massive AoE heals on his 5th skill, and he's got lots of iframes and the right balance of energy and physical damage. Then I went ahead and dropped Thanos 2 spots, but he's still there among the top 10. I still think he's a valuable force, despite the fact that he's been totally erased by Ant-Man for damage numbers in terms of universal villains. He's still one of the most flexible, and he's got a uniform. Another surprise that you guys might see here is Spider-Man 2099. I want to take a little bit of time to talk about what happened with him. I actually moved him up 2 spots, and while he's not as good as Quicksilver for Extreme Alliance Battle, he is just crafty. He can basically take down almost any character one-on-one, given the way his tier 2 passive works, given the fact that he has the webbing that can threaten to shut down completely any character that doesn't have debuff. And I think if it weren't for Spider-Man 2099, if he was out of the game, I think Jean Grey and Odin and Supergiant and Malekith's leaderships would be much less prevalent, even with Spider-Man. I think really it's 2099 that is constantly hovering to threaten to shut you down with just 2 webbing skills and then a boatload of damage, lots of iframes, and then Lila, which makes him basically impossible to hit because of accelerated decoy. It's very hard to one-shot him. It's almost impossible, and he's just really good. The only marks I can take off for him is that he's not number 1 for speed hero, but I thought if that's really all I'm taking away from him, he should be better than Cable, and that's why you're seeing that switch there. Cable dropping 4 spots to number 10. He's basically not that good outside of Extreme Alliance Battle, and that's basically the end of the story. He's bugged right now, so even in Extreme Alliance Battle, he's not very good, but he basically just clears things quickly. Yeah, he can do World Boss Ultimate, yeah, he can do Shadowland, but he's a one-trick pony. And you just basically build him to do max damage, and he does nothing else. So I really just see the inflexibility of a character like that, a very one-dimensional character, and Cable is just bound to be replaced. He's basically just a placeholder. He doesn't have this kind of long-lasting effectiveness like a Spider-Man 2099, like a Thanos. So I really don't see why he should be so high on the list as he was last time. Doctor Strange and others took hits. They kind of moved down because of the rise of other characters, as I've explained. Ant-Man I put at number 8 because although he is better than Thanos for Extreme Alliance Battle, he's very fragile. So in PvP, he's almost non-existent. In certain PvP modes, you can get away with using him, like maybe King of the Hill, because you can control him directly, but in hands-off game modes, nobody goes with Ant-Man because he just gets one-shotted and he's a paper weight in terms of his density. I guess he's more of a paper, not the paperweight, but you get the point. He dishes out the damage, but he cannot take it in return. Besides Cable, I also moved up Scarlet Witch 1. I just feel like the pierce or the penetration meta is here to stay, and she's only going to get more and more powerful as we see other characters come in, whether they're tanky, whether they have a lot of HP, whether they revive. It really doesn't matter. Scarlet Witch is just going to continue to get better. If she gets a uniform, she could transform into the next Jean Grey potentially, especially if she got something like a revive or a massive heal or some kind of crazy continuous effect tornado like Jean Grey has. So it's definitely possible, and she's kind of just on the cusp. She could be as good as her brother with just a small tweak or two, given that she has essentially the same passive that he has with the penetration. It's on her tier 2 actually. Then we have Odin and Dormammu, basically just kind of struggling to keep up with the likes of Nova, Anti-Man, and the Pierce boys and girls, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and that's why they just keep dropping and dropping. No uniforms. Dormammu is great for the reflect and the revive, but that's basically it. Sharon Rogers, same thing. Spider-Man, same thing. I put Blue Marvel in at 16. I actually haven't built my Blue Marvel yet, to be honest. That's outside of 6 stars, but I have seen a lot of him in Alliance tournaments. He's very tanky. He might be tankier than Wolverine with the right CTP, I'm not sure, but he's a very cool character, and his damage is respectable even at tier 1 at 5 gears for something like PvE content Shadowland. So I think he's in a pretty decent spot. He just doesn't have the crowd control that we expect, so that's why I docked him a couple points behind Spider-Man. Then a couple of interesting changes. I didn't change Loki. I thought about it and I thought about it and I said, what's wrong with Loki? He's great. He's not the best, but his damage is really good if you build him offensively. He can do World Boss Ultimate, he shreds Shadowland, and he can still do respectable numbers in other content. He's really not that great in PvP. He's never been excellent because of the clone kind of kerfuffle, but he can still do work if he has enough protection and if he has enough time to get those clones off. It's basically night-night. So if you put him in the right team in Conquest, you should try it. He might actually surprise you. Then I went and I docked Corvus 5 spots, and again, this is kind of in response to the fact that he doesn't have a uniform, and outside of the revive for PvP, he's really just playing second or third string to a lot of other characters. I do take a lot of criticism for how low I rank the Black Order in general. I do know that from some of the viewers, but I challenge you to think of where they fit and why they're so dominant. I know they're universal villains, which is a premium tag for Shadowland, but it's becoming less and less of a premium, especially with the amount of stage variety that we have, and the fact that we have a lot of characters that can play dual roles. And that's one of the reasons why I continue to advocate for a character like Cyclops, despite the fact that people really think he's not that great. He is, and he can play the role almost the same as Corvus, aside from the revive, in different situations. And he also has the ignore targeting, the ignore iframe effect, that actually makes him extremely dangerous in Conquest and King of the Hill. That's why Cyclops only moved down a few spots. I also moved down Supergiant and Proxima. I didn't move Ebony Mob because I felt like the iframes and the stun and the clones is still pretty useful, and the leadership is still quite useful. Enchantress, Carnage, all these guys lowered. Hulk actually moved up one because he's just really good. The heal works. It keeps him alive for a really long time. He can out-tank Quicksilver's 5th skill if it's not comboed with other skills for most Hulks. And he just does work in general. And he can also push out a lot of damage now if you max out Mythic, his newest uniform. I did dock also Carnage 5 points because outside of Extreme Alliance Battle, he's very limited. Again, in any kind of auto PvP mode, he just falls to bits. He's completely useless. That's why you don't see characters like Elsa, Black Bolt on this list. They're basically unusable, even at tier 2 maxed out for things like Conquest or King of the Hill, because they never prioritize their skill that gives them defense, immunity, or invincibility, and they get dunked in 1 or 2 shots by an enemy who has just good damage. They don't even need to match their damage output. So I don't want to put as much of a premium on Extreme Alliance Battle, and that is why characters like that are falling. And then finally, rounding out the bottom of the list, I put X-23 there on 28. She's good, but the more I use her, I'm a little bit disappointed, or I'm a little bit kind of wishing she would do more damage in certain situations. Her damage is very variable. It spikes high and it spikes really low, and I saw that on later Shadowland stages where she could kill someone in 10 seconds, and then struggled to kill another character in 30 seconds because I wasn't lining up the proc. Her 5th skill was not hitting the character because they kept kind of moving and fidgeting around the screen, and it seems as though there are some tracking issues with her skills that make her damage inconsistent, so I can't really put her much higher despite the fact that she has such a crazy healing factor. It almost doesn't seem like she's healing at times because she gets one-shotted. And then literally rounding out the list, Adam Warlock. I honestly didn't want to put him on this list at all. I wanted to make a little bit of a meme out of it, but I couldn't bring myself to do it because I know people would ask and they would be genuinely confused despite yesterday's video. He's not very good. His damage is really, really low. It took him almost a full minute in a relay for Shadowland to kill the bosses with 45% energy attack in addition to a team-up bonus. He's got lots of iframes, yeah. He revives, yeah. But he hits like a preschool student. It's really not that good, and especially considering the cost, it's prohibitively expensive, and it doesn't make sense. He has to be low on the list. Can't put him any higher. Then we have Rogue and Thor there at the bottom. So let me know what you guys think of the new tier list. I always enjoy making these and kind of puzzling over them, and I really enjoy seeing all of the comments from you guys. Let me hear what you have to say. Subscribe if you like the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.